Yo, welcome to the NS9 MLB Draft Preview. I'm your host, Anthony DiNardo. With me, we got Neil, and we have ourselves a very special guest today. We have Jim Callies from MLB Pipeline. How's it going, Jim? Welcome to the show.
It's going good. It's like, I call it the calm before the storm, although it's not really the calm because we just updated our top 100 prospects last night. We're finalizing the draft top 250 order right now. I'm working on the mock draft. I think about 10 minutes after we start recording this, they're going to release futures game rosters. So I think it's actually the storm that's only going to get bigger as we get closer to the draft and the All-Star game. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's probably my busiest time of the year, but also probably the most fun time of the year.
Excellent. Yeah, for you, for sure. And speaking of the top 100, Anthony Salamito entering the top 100 now.
Yeah, he snuck on there, like number 100, right? It's like it's all blur. I believe he's 100, right?
Although, exactly 100.
Yuri Perez is going to graduate, so Anthony's going to, by the time people see this, he'll probably be up to number 99. But yeah, no, it's he's having a nice, one of the better pitching prospects in the minor league. It's crazy. I didn't count it up. I think there's only something like 9 pitchers on our top 100 who are pitching right now in full season leagues. There's some hurt guys on there too, and there's some guys in the big leagues. But in terms of guys who are actually in the minor leagues, I think it's single digit pitchers, which is crazy.
Wow, that's interesting.
Considering that Fangraphs was really, really low on him going into the season, I'm taking it. This is a great development. He's looked really good.
He has looked really good. So
certainly. Well, we have you on the show. Even though I could talk about Salamito for like the next hour, we won't do that. Let's talk about this upcoming MLB draft because it's big stuff for the Pittsburgh Pirates, the number 1 overall pick. And unlike the year with Henry Davis, where there's a lot of questions on who to take because there was good talent, but like not elite. And it's like you could save some money here. You could, do some things which the Pirates end up doing. They took Henry Davis under slot. And then, of course, that's how they got Anthony Salamito we talked about. This one seems a little bit different. There's some really good talent up top, Jim.
Yeah, it's totally different. I mean, I know in 2021, which was a strange draft because you were coming off the pandemic year where you didn't have really college summer leagues, so you didn't get to see guys hit with wood bats. There was some high school showcase stuff, but it was just 2021 draft was sort of getting back to normal. It was our first draft in July. People were figuring things out. Marcelo Meyer was our top-ranked prospect who wound up going fourth to Red Sox, but it wasn't, like nobody was saying, oh my gosh, Pirates have unbelievable opportunity here with guys who are available. And this year, I feel like we have 5 guys who would be legitimate number 1 picks in a lot of drafts. You have, the 2 guys at LSU, Dylan Cruz, one of the best college outfielders we've seen in a long time. Paul Skenes, who you could argue is right up there with Steven Strasburg as the best pitching prospect in draft history, to be honest. Wyatt Langford, who's not that much different than Dylan Cruz. I mean, a little bit different type of players, but if you're grading them out, they're pretty similar. And then you have 2 high school outfielders, Walker Jenkins, who, I think the only difference, I mean, if he'd gone to college and done what Dylan Cruz and Wyatt Langford had done in the SEC, we'd be talking about Walker Jenkins, more, but like he's a high school guy, so he takes a little bit back seat. And then Max Clark, another high school outfielder, probably has the best all-around tools of any of those guys. He just has less power. Probably like he's not a slap hitter, but it's probably more average-ish power, and those other guys are all plus or better power. But yeah, the Pirates have 5 really, really good options. I mean, I'd kind of put Cruz and Skenes and Cruz on a tier by themselves, and Wyatt Langford really close to that tier, and then Jenkins and Clark behind them. But again, I think we're talking 2021, Jenkins or Clark might have been the top-ranked prospect in that draft.
Mm-hmm. All right.
You hold on one second. I think my wife has locked herself out of the house. We got our front door fixed, and now it's locking too much, and our dogs are going crazy. So I'll be back in 1 second.
Sure, that works.
Wait, I need to see if I can get my Pulp Fiction picture in the frame too.
I was just gonna say I saw it behind him. Right, look at you two. There it is. This is riveting stuff right now.
Okay, I'm back now. There you go. My front door works too well, so it locks too easily.
Neil just wanted to get his Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, I need to get my Pulp Fiction
too. There you go. Yeah, I like that.
But
no, Neil, you gonna say something?
Okay, I guess my first question for you would be like, you talked about like how close. So I had two questions about Cruz and Langford are in terms of skill set. So you put Cruz like slightly above, but realistically, like how big is that gap? And I guess my second question is, how likely do you think that either of them stick at center field?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we have Cruz ranked number 1 on our draft top 200. We haven't updated it to 250 quite yet. And Langford's 3. And yeah, I think there's a perception among most fans that the gap is larger than that would imply. And it's really not. I mean, if you're comparing the two guys to each other, Cruz, I say, is a better hitter. Maybe he's a full grade better hitter. I think Langford maybe has a half grade better power. Cruz is a better runner, better chance to stay in center field. He's played center field. Langford hasn't. They're both right-handed. But, they're both pretty comparable. I mean, I think you feel like Cruz has a higher floor because you feel a little bit better about him as a hitter. And he's the best hitter in the draft. He's running better this year. And I think he's gone from coming into the year, you hope he could stay in center field. Like, realistic hope, but like you weren't sure. And now you feel like, okay, I'm pretty confident he could stay in center. That said, I think he's more of a solid center fielder. You might have a better center fielder on a big league club, but I think he's capable. Whereas Langford, I think has a chance, but you don't know. Cruz is a little bit more athletic. Langford's a little bit more powerful. But I think it's, like I said, I would take Cruz, but I think the gap is maybe closer than fans might think. I mean, I don't. I mean, we don't talk to all 30 teams. I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if there's a team out there that valued Langford more than Cruz. Like, that wouldn't be, like, shocking. So I think it's pretty close. You just feel better with Dylan, that better pure hitter, better chance of playing center field, and you've seen him in center field.
Do you think, and we'll go a couple places with this too, but do you think there's a possibility, since they're that close as you're mentioning, the Pirates could look into opportunity again, similar to like what they did Henry Davis, and maybe go Langford under slot to maybe go later rounds, spend some money?
I mean, I think the Pirates are doing what they should do is you've got to kind of try to figure out what each of these guys would cost. Now, I still think when you're picking 1-1, you should pick who you think the best guy is. And there's a couple things at play here. So the bonus pool that teams have to work with, the bonus values for the picks went up about 10% this year. So the first pick is valued at a little over $9.7 million. And that's like $1.3 million more than the all-time draft bonus record. The Pirates pool as a whole is $16.2 million. And since you can go 5% over the pool without losing future first-round picks, that's kind of like you could go more, but nobody ever does. That gives them about $17 million to play with. So if you signed a guy for $9 million, which would break the bonus record, you'd still have $8 million to play with. You'd still have plenty of money to play with for your other picks. I mean, I think they are looking into things like that. I mean, there's all kinds of rumors. I mean, Dylan Cruz wants $10 million, that Dylan Cruz doesn't want to be in Pittsburgh, or his agent doesn't want him to be in Pittsburgh, because their history of signing guys to long-term deals isn't encouraging. I mean, I don't know if that stuff's true. I mean, you hear a bunch of rumors right now. The tricky thing is, like I said, I would always pick whoever you think the best guy is and pay. Like, I'm of the mind that, let's say you like Dylan Cruz. If I pick Dylan Cruz and I offer him $9 million or $9.2 million, that still gives me almost $8 million to play with. Is Dylan Cruz turning that down to go back to LSU, even if he doesn't want to come to Pittsburgh or want $10 million? I can't see that he could. You never know. But like, I would just take the best guy and figure we're going to get him done. But the tricky part about trying to save money, like, okay, let's do a discount on a guy and save money. So the Pirates pick at 1. They don't pick until 42. And when you get to the end, after the first round, it's 28 picks. You have the Mariners have 2 picks, Twins have a pick, the Marlins have a pick, Tigers have a pick, Reds have a pick, Athletics have a pick, Nationals have a pick, Athletics actually have another pick. So that's 5, 6, 7. That's 9 picks with teams that have $13 million bonus pools. So anybody you're trying to sneak to 42, if you're the Pirates, if that's your strategy, we'll take less up top, and we're going to get a really good guy at 42. There's like 9 teams you have to get in by, and I think that's really, really difficult to do. Langford, yeah, he'd come at a discount, I guess, because I don't think he's going 2. I think he's a pretty strong bet to go 3, where the slot's 8.3. Maybe if he went 1, he'd get 8.5. So you're not talking about that much less. I'm making these numbers aren't hard and fast what teams are offering. But if I feel like I could get Dylan Cruz done for 9.2, and I get Langford done for 8.5, that's $700,000 to me. If I think Cruz is a better player, it's not worth it to me to go get Langford there and save $700,000.
Okay. Similar question, because I read from, I believe, Joe Doyle's mock. I think a couple weeks ago, he mocked Max Clark, number 1, to the Pirates. And he said a big reason for that is because he believes he's heard industry sources saying that Max Clark's ask is about $2 million less than whatever Cruz would be asking for. Well, would you say that would be? I don't know, do you know? Have you heard if that's true or not, or like, would you say
that seems a little bit light, just because? Well, I mean, if Cruz is asking for 10 and Max Clark's asking for 8, I do think Max Clark is the most. You would get the best deal with Max Clark, is what I'm trying to say, I guess, because I think Max Clark is probably going to go 4th or 5th. And if he goes 4th, that slot's $7.7 million. If he goes 5th, the slot's a little over 7.1. So if Max Clark went number 1, it probably cost you $7.5 or $8 million. Like I would guess it would be somewhere in there, depending on whether you feel the Rangers can take him 4, the Twins are going to take him 5. I mean, I do think it's a possibility. Again, I think all these things are possibilities. You have to look at them all. Ultimately, I'm not running the Pirates, and I'm not playing with real money. I think you got to pick the guy you think is the best guy, because, I mean, if you think Max Clark is, you could make the argument Max Clark is the best all-around tools of these guys. He probably has average power, maybe a little bit better if you like it more than that. And the other guys are all plus power, but Max can hit. He's the best runner of the group. He's the best center fielder of the group. He's got the best arm of the group. So it's not like Max Clark. You're inventing Max Clark as the number 1 pick, but I think most people will tell you he's the 4th or 5th best guy in this draft. And if the Pirates feel he's the 4th or 5th best guy in the draft, again, my advice would be take the best guy and don't pay him. But yeah, I don't think it's impossible. So many people, I think the Pirates are going to cut a deal. Did that 2 years ago. But like you guys noted, it's a totally different draft. This isn't 2 years ago. There was no clear-cut, obvious slam dunk number 1. There was nobody like Paul Skenes or Dylan Cruz or even Wyatt Langford in that draft, and so it was different. This draft, you have guys like that. So, again, I'm kind of making these numbers up as I go along. Like, I feel like you could sign Dylan Cruz for 9.2. I feel like Langford probably going to cost you, I would think, 8.5-ish. Walker Jenkins is not going to take a deal because he's got the same agent as Dylan Cruz. I can't see Walker Jenkins taking a deal to go number 1 necessarily. But if maybe Max Clark costs you $7.5 million or $8 million. But if you think Dylan Cruz is better than those guys, you should take Dylan Cruz. And if again, it's not my choice. If you're asking me, I would take Paul Skenes.
Yeah.
Well, now that we got all that stuff out of the way, all the different scenarios, the different options and whatnot, I'm with you. Like, I feel this is the draft you don't play around with, especially this. Like, back to the Henry Davis one, you could look at 5 of them and say they're all about the same. Who's going to get the best deal, right? This one, I think I'm with you where it's 2 guys. They're just on this whole other level. Is it Skenes or is it Cruz? You pick who you think's the best. You deal with the money and go from there. So,
but let me throw in one more thing too. The thing is,
okay,
like I was saying, the Pirates have the largest bonus pool of anybody. It's $16.2 million. And we're going to round that up to 17 with the extra 5%. So even if Dylan Cruz cost you $9.2 million, that still gives you $7.8 million to spend on the rest of your draft. That's going to be more money than almost anybody else has after the first round. So you could still, go nuts and get some players. And like I said, it's too much risk for me. You don't know who's going to get to 42, but you're going to have a bunch of money. You may not if you go cheap or take a discount at the top to push a guy to 42, you can't guarantee he gets there. So just take a guy, and you're still going to have a ton of money, and you're still going to have more spending power than almost anybody by the time it gets down there. Like, it'd be one thing if, you had some crazy scenario, and they've got the same agent. I'm going to take Wyatt Langford number 1, and we're going to push Max Clark down to 42. Now, I don't think other teams will let that happen. But, if you could do something like that, okay, now you've got me interested. But the odds of that happening, I just think some other team would step in and say, no, we're not. We're going to take Max Clark, and we'll pay him. But yeah, it's just the Pirates don't have – the Pirates have so much money, they're going to be able to – go get Anthony Solomito or Bubba Chandler or whoever, those types of guys like they did with Henry Davis. They can do that without discounting the number 1 pick. But anyway, so now to your question.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. That's really good to hear because, the Pirates have gone through that. And the one thing is the Pirates haven't notoriously, they're cheap, right? Major League and such. But in the draft, they've never notoriously been that way.
Yeah. That's the only time I've heard that the Pirates have lots of money to spend.
Right. And they'll spend it. But, like you said, it's not our money and I'm with you. What it's going to cost to get Skenes or Cruz, you just do that. And so I guess the big question is Cruz or Skenes. And I think you answered it, but tell us a little bit. You said Skenes. It's been Cruz all year, Cruz or bust. So why is Skenes really entering the picture as a legit, I am the better player person?
Yeah, and see, it's interesting because I do think, we surveyed, Jonathan Mayo did a survey where I think he got about 30 responses to it, and he asked teams just who they would pick if they were number 1, and Cruz got about 2/3, 70% of the votes for that. And I think it's easier, it's safer to say we'll take a hitter because they don't get hurt as much. Cruz, and you feel pretty good Cruz is going to hit based on the way he's hit in college. He was a guy coming out of high school. I just think you got to look at I know there's more risk with a pitcher, and yeah, Paul Skenes throws hard, and guys who throw hard get hurt. But I just look at how good he is relative to his position compared to Cruz. Like I was just saying earlier, you guys asked. There's not this gargantuan difference between Cruz and Langford, and if you're tooling them out, there's not a gargantuan difference between Cruz and Jenkins. Cruz has done it at the SEC, and Jenkins is a high school kid. Max Clark and Cruz are kind of different types of players. But again, if you were overall grading them out, their overall grades would be similar. You just have more comfortable with Cruz because Clark's, a high school kid. So, in this draft alone, I know this is a common draft. I've got 4 really good outfielders that I could take. Paul Skenes, I think, the last guy who I think you could even talk about being in the same conversation with him as a draft pitching prospect. I know it's a Pirates podcast, and it's probably making anybody smile. It's Garrett Cole, but he's better than Garrett Cole was. Garrett Cole didn't dominate like this in college, and I think Skenes' fastball is more overpowering than Garrett Cole's, and I think his slider is a better slider than Garrett Cole had. He was just more dominant. I think he even had. I'd have to go back and look, but Paul Skenes is like a 10-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. I think he's got better command than Garrett Cole had. So then you have to go to Strasburg, who's the best ever. And it's funny. You can look at Strasburg. And it's kind of like eye of the beholder. You can look at him and say, oh, man, Strasburg's been hurt a lot, and Tommy John early in his career, and this big contract he just signed, he's barely going to earn any of it. But when he was healthy, which was for a good chunk of years, Steven Strasburg was almost as good as any pitcher in the game. The Washington Nationals won a World Series. It wasn't only him. I want to say Strasburg was MVP, right? I think he was World Series MVP.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And he was part of consistent playoff teams. And I think, having a pitcher like that, they come around once a decade if you're lucky. And you either draft Paul Skenes, or if you're the Pittsburgh Pirates, you're never going to have Paul Skenes on your team ever. You're not going to be able to trade for him because teams don't trade guys like that. And they're not going to be able to sign him as a free agent. And so I just think it's harder to find a Paul Skenes than a Dylan Cruz. And I like Dylan Cruz a lot. So I know there's guys out there who'd be like, oh, you can't take a pitcher. I'm sorry. If the pitcher's Paul Skenes, I'm taking Paul Skenes at 1-1. And like, I also think, the NL Central's up for grabs. I'm not saying this year. Like I wouldn't put him in the big leagues this year. He's pitched a lot of innings. I would do that. But like the Pirates, they have a lot of young talent. They could realistically contend as early as 2024, 2025. Paul Skenes can be part of those teams. So if it were me, and again, I'm not drafting for need per se. I'm just drafting the best guy. I get once in a decade, a Paul Skenes comes along, and you have to be picking at the very top of the draft to got him. I mean, Cole went 1, Strasburg went 1. These guys don't last long in the draft. And if he gets to the second pick, the Nationals are going to snatch him up. Even if Max Clark goes 1, I think Nationals will take Skenes at 2. So I would take Skenes 1-1 and not worry. My dogs are going crazy. Not worry about the pitching risk. How about you guys? Who do you guys want the Pirates to take it with?
So I'll start
because the wrong answer.
I'm probably the most open-minded about this. I think my order right now would be Cruz, Langford, Clark, Skenes.
Man, okay.
It has nothing to do necessarily with Skenes, and we'll kind of get into this because I think you even talked about it on a podcast today, but I see the Pirates' current development right now struggling with guys who don't have the best fastball shape. You see Roansy Contreras being shunted to the bullpen. Quinn Priester's ceiling is being limited because even though his curveball is like a 70-grade pitch, his four-seamer probably doesn't play too well in the majors. And since scouts are talking about Skenes kind of having a bit of a flat fastball, and the Pirates seeming to have an inability to fix that, would you say that would be a legitimate concern in terms of drafting someone like Skenes?
Maybe. I would argue, if I was trying to argue for Skenes, that he throws so hard, so consistently, and he commands the fastball so well. That's a little different than, say, maybe Quinn Priester's fastball shape or Contreras' fastball shape at 95, 96, whatever, isn't optimal. Skenes is throwing like 98, 99, 100, 101, 102. He's going to be pitching on 4 days rest instead of 6 days rest. So he's probably not going to be throwing 148 times in a game every time out. Mm-hmm. But, I get that, but I just think Skenes, and I don't have the data in front of me exactly how flat or, the shape, how much of a concern it is, but I just think his velocity and command maybe allay those concerns somewhat too.
Okay. Yeah. No, that does make a lot of sense. I guess, like, for me, you're looking to draft Skenes because he's going to be a Steven Strasburg type, and something that kind of reminded me of this was Hunter Green, where Hunter Green has probably one of the best fastballs, pure fastballs in the majors, but he does run into issues where, like, it can be flat. And when hitters get around it, he can get crushed. Yeah, so I don't think his ERA has ever been like spectacular in his young career, and obviously that can change. Like he's a stud. I don't want to take anything away from Hunter Green, but in terms of when you're trying to find a pitcher like the next Cole, like the next Strasburg, would that be something you think that could hold him back from getting to that ceiling?
Maybe. The thing is, he's got 2 other pretty good pitches. It's a little unfair comparison. I know you weren't comparing, but I think like we had Hunter Green ranked number 1 on our draft list. Was that 17?
17, I think, yeah.
Yeah. And like looking back, like I don't know that I would have done that again because he's gotten a much better slider since he's been pro ball, but he was pretty much the Hunter Green appeal was that he threw so hard and he did it so easy. He still got hurt. But like he didn't have great feel for spinning the ball, and his changeup was okay. But like I think Skenes' other pitches are better than Hunter Green's were. And again, I think he commands it because you're exactly right. We saw it in the Futures game, it was 2018, where he threw like 102-mile-an-hour fastball and Luis Alexander Basabe homered off of it because it was belt high. No, I'm serious. Like you guys know, if Hunter Green, as hard as he throws, and he throws consistently harder than anybody in the big leagues who starts, if it's up, letters, up in that area, he's unhittable. But if he gets around the belt, like if it's lower in the strike zone, guys can hit velocity, and it doesn't have great length. And I think that's the difference to me is that Skenes has really good command. So if and again, I don't have the exact data exactly how flat or unshapely the pitch is, but if Skenes is throwing 98 to 100, I trust that Paul Skenes can keep it up high where it's going to be hard to catch up to. So, I'm not as concerned about that as I might be other guys. Like I know it's college and it's different than pro ball, but he's pretty much blown through guys all year. And, I think he's got, arguably the best slider in this draft. And I don't know if you guys saw, I think it was, I've lost track now, College World Series goes on for a while. It was his first College World Series outing. His slider wasn't as sharp. I think he threw like 36 changeups. His changeup was dancing all over the place. So I think he's got, granted, he's older and he's had more time to develop, but I do think he's got multiple weapons and he commands them very well.
Mm-hmm. And just one more, and I'll let Donardo hop in just very quick. If the Pirates drafted Skenes, and let's say by the time the draft comes around, the Pirates have magically risen back up to contending for the division, could you put Paul Skenes on the major league team in 2023? Do you think his stuff is that good, or would he still need some time to develop and mature in the minors?
It'd be interesting. You have to check, the health of his arm. Like we're recording this on the night of the championship game of the College World Series, and he's not going to start, but he's available. We don't know if he's going to pitch 1 inning, 3, 5, whatever. He's pitched, I think, about 110, 115 innings this year. He won't pitch after tonight. By the time he signs, let's say he signs quick, he's probably going to have taken at least 3 weeks off. So you got to ramp him back up. Like I would more and I think it's tough. Like I was going to say is I think if you're going to do that, you want to do what the White Sox did with Chris Sale, but it was different then because the draft was a lot earlier. There was less gap between the end of the season and the draft, and they signed him quick. They sent him, I think, to A-ball to start, and he pitched in relief, and he kind of worked a little bit. So if you're doing I don't think you just take Paul Skenes. Let's say he signs a month from today, at the end of July. It hasn't really pitched, and just say, okay, you're in the big leagues. I think you'd want to try to build him up a little bit. It would be tough because I think because of the layoff, you'd have to build him up so he'd be ready to pitch in games. And I think you'd want to have him pitch a few innings in the minors here, a few innings in the minors there. I think it'd be more realistic if you did that he'd be a bullpen piece this year. Put him in the rotation, I think, would be kind of tough. Okay. You can also think about the difficulty guys have with the major league ball being different than the minor league ball. He wouldn't really have much time to adjust to that. It'd be like, here you go, Paul. Get us to the playoffs type of thing. But so I think it would be tough. I think if the draft were a month earlier, like it used to be, then it'd be more realistic because you could come out of the College World Series and he still theoretically you could sign him July 1st and then maybe ease him into the minors and go rather than have to ramp him back up. So I guess talking through it, I think this year would be kind of tough just because he's going to have some downtime. And I really doubt that he's going to be sitting there over the next 3 or 4 weeks between when he gets done at the College World Series and signs. He'll be keeping his arm in shape in case the major league team wants to try to rush him. I would think he's probably going to take it pretty easy.
And looking currently at the Pirates and Nationals record, he's probably assuming he's not going to need to. So I understand.
You never know in the NL Central. You never know.
You're right, but I think we're starting to know.
It was like at the heart of the question, it was kind of is his stuff developed enough to where let's say not 2023, but you would be comfortable putting him into the rotation opening day 2024? Would you say his stuff? Yeah, you would say that?
I would. But I think it'd be more likely you'd see a deal happen with Strasburg, where I don't think Paul Skenes is going to pitch this summer. So I think even if he looked great in spring training, I think it might be a little bit of a stretch. He's good. I wouldn't say it'd be impossible to put him straight in the big league. I think it'd be more likely you'd see maybe send him to Double-A, and if he tears it up, you start thinking about calling him up a month into the 2024 season. It would surprise me if he was on the opening day roster. Because the other thing is, I know we have this new incentive rule with awards, where rewards you for having guys on the opening day roster. But that's also, it's a pretty narrow window you have to fit in. You have to win the Rookie of the Year, be top 3 in MVP or Cy Young Award voting, I think, before you're arbitration eligible. So there would be, whoever takes him, you could argue, if you could figure out the free agency, but even the Super 2. But let's say you need to keep him down 3 weeks to delay his free agency a year, that might be more valuable than hoping you get a draft pick out of him because he wins an award. So I as good as Paul Skenes is, to me, the earliest I feel like we'd see him would be May of next year.
All right. The Pirates certainly like keeping their prospects down way too long. So
yeah, we already knew that answer. But I guess for me to answer your question too, I've been conditioned. Now we had a show. It was more to talk about prospects. We talked a little bit about Dylan Cruz beforehand, knowing the Pirates had the number 1 pick. And I think the biggest takeaway from there was don't get the Dylan Cruz fatigue. He's the best player. You're going to hear names pop up, the new name of the week, this person, that working. Don't get the Dylan Cruz fatigue. You draft Dylan Cruz, right? So I've been conditioned. Like, listen, let's get all the noise out. It's Dylan Cruz. But like, I'm really at this point, and especially like listening to you and other people, and like just looking like Paul Skenes is really good, guys. And maybe he's like I talked about beforehand, like maybe he actually is making a point that he is the best player. It's not just this guy who came up and like he had a really good hot start. He's throwing 102 on pitch number like 123.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to feel that way, but I'm also understanding and trying to, buck the trend too. Like Cruz is safer, right? He is a pitcher. So let me ask you something else too, because someone who isn't like in my mind, I want Dylan Cruz because I feel like Skenes might be a little bit riskier. When you see him throwing 102 and throwing 120, 130 pitches in the game, right? And you're thinking Tommy John, right? Because that's the first thing people go to mentality-wise. Put me at ease. Why are we overvaluing and thinking that's too much of a risk, what he's doing right now pitching-wise?
Yeah, I mean, I think all pitchers come with risk. You have to take some risk at some point. And, like, it's weird because, like, I'm saying I take Skenes. I'd be happy with – here's the way I would look at it from a Pirates perspective. There's no wrong answer here. If you get Cruz or Skenes, either
That's
way, like that's a great pick. Either one of those guys, probably in terms of what they do for Pittsburgh, going to be the best number 1 pick in franchise history. Like, so it's number 1 overall pick. I'm not saying better than Barry Bonds, but
no Brian Bullington.
You know what's funny though? Brian Bullington gets a bad rap because yes, they should have taken B.J. Upton, and Dave Littlefield was too honest when they asked him on draft day, and he said that Brian Bullington could become a number 3 starter, and people were like, "What? Like number 3 starters are really good." Brian Bullington just got hurt, but he was a legit dude. I feel like Brian Bullington. I always feel like I can't criticize a draft pick if it made sense at the time, if it was a valid pick at the time. I won't go back to this guy. Like Chris Benson didn't turn out, but Chris Benson was absolutely the number 1 pick in 1996. But so anyway, I was digressing. Yeah, I worry about the fact that guys who throw hard, like, just don't hold up. Like, like if it's Tommy John, guys come back from it. I mean, I would say in terms of Skenes' health, J.J. Cooper, Baseball America, had a great article he wrote about a week ago where he was saying 123 pitches in college is not the same as 123 pitches in a major league game. The guys are pitching on 6 days rest. Yeah, I know he pitched on 4 days rest, for his second start. He hasn't been throwing 120 pitches every game. But also, when you're watching a guy pitch, you have to see what he looks like. And one, he wasn't laboring. He was still throwing hard at the end of the start. It'd be one thing if he's losing his mechanics or he's lowering his arm slot or he's suddenly throwing 96 miles an hour or not commanding his pitches as well. He looked fresh, might be a little strong, but he still looked really, really good. And as JJ pointed out, on the development level, there's a reason guys don't throw 120 pitches every 5th day in the minor leagues. We're talking every 7 days in college. And again, he didn't throw 120 every time out. But as JJ also pointed out, the reason guys don't throw 120 pitches in the big leagues isn't because people are afraid they're going to break, like especially as you get into your 30s and your arms, fairly healthy, or you've shown you can handle the workload. It's because guys aren't effective on pitches 100 to 120 at the big league level. They don't want him even going a third time through the order in most cases. Paul Skenes that pitches 100 120 is still by far the best pitcher LSU has. And I'm not saying that's an excuse to then let him throw 150, but it's not like, I think when people see guys throw 120 pitches, like the Twitter pitch count police get all up in arms, like, oh my God, what's he doing? Like, this is different than Quinn Matthews at Stanford throwing 156 pitches. That's not good. But this isn't like they're running Paul Skenes into the ground. Like, again, if people watch the game, I don't know, his last pitch was his second start on 4 days rest, but he was throwing like 98 to 100 in his last inning of work. Again, it'd be one thing. I've seen guys in the College World Series years ago like laboring where they were. The worst game I ever saw was Ben McDonald versus Kirk Dressendorfer. Ben McDonald's number 1 pick. Kirk Dressendorfer was best pitcher in college baseball for 3 years in terms of performance. McDonald had a blister. He gave up I think he still holds a record for runs given up in a World Series start. Dressendorfer was this little guy, like 6 foot, won the first round to the A's next year and got hurt. I think Dressendorfer maybe pitched a little bit in the big leagues. Anyway, Dressendorfer had a bad back. He could not bend over. But Texas was short on pitching depth, and they were up 11-5. So Cliff Guston let Dressendorfer throw 150. It was awful. That Dressendorfer, it was painful. It made my back hurt watching it, and the stuff wasn't good. That was yes, this guy's throwing way too many pitches. It's not the same with Skenes, so I'm not worried about him being abused. And again, he's going to be. I mean, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't handle pitchers carefully, but you look at how much care major league teams handle pitchers with. They can't keep guys healthy. Guys get hurt in the minors all the time. Guys get hurt in the majors all the time. It's there's no magic formula that, hey, if we keep him under 100 pitches, he'll be healthy forever. It doesn't work that way. I think with pitchers, you have to assume that most pitchers are going to get hurt at some point. But, it's somewhere. I still think back to Max Scherzer. I saw Max Scherzer in the Arizona Fall League after he signed. He sat out. He held out for almost a year and signed right before next year's draft. So I think he pitched a little in the minors, but then he pitched the Fall League. And he had literally the biggest head whack I think I've ever seen on a pitcher in person. His head's bouncing off his shoulder every time he threw a pitch. And every scout said some variation of, you got to get that guy to the big leagues as a reliever right away because he's going to blow out in 2 years. Get what you can out of him. He's going to blow out, and then you see what you have after that. And I think until the last year or two, I don't think Max Scherzer ever had an arm injury. I think he had a finger injury at one point, and that's what was cropping up in the World Series. And maybe he had an arm injury last year. But Max Scherzer never got hurt. I mean, look, he cleaned up his delivery some too. But that's just my way of saying there's no real rhyme or reason as to this guy looks like he's got a pretty delivery and we handle him carefully and he breaks, and this guy, his delivery looks awful and he stays healthy. So it's I guess I look at it Dylan Cruz would be a fine number 1 pick. So I'm not putting Dylan Cruz down. But I guess I look at it Dylan Cruz is safer. I mean, he's good. So it's not like you're just getting some guy's going to bat 7th in your lineup. But when you're drafting at top of the draft, do you want to draft safe, or do you want to try to win a World Series? And you can win a World Series with Dylan Cruz too. But Paul Skenes, he's that type of guy that if he pitches a couple times in the world, he's one of those guys who's capable of going on that postseason run, and maybe he wins 4 or 5 games in postseason and carries you to the World Series. There are not many guys like Paul Skenes in the big leagues right now. So to me, I get that Dylan Cruz is safer. And look, he wouldn't be a bad number 1 pick at all. And it is very close. But for me, I'm trying to win a World Series. I think you win. I think if I have Paul Skenes, chances are the other team's not going to have Paul Skenes. So I'm going to feel that's going to give me an advantage in the games where he's on the mound. Dylan Cruz is really good. There's other guys in the big leagues I'd put, on the level with Dylan Cruz.
Yeah. And I think what I would say, maybe just a reassurance, is that the comps he gets are Cole and Strasburg in terms of what he's like as a prospect. And Garrett Strasburg, who hasn't gotten any WAR the last 3 seasons, 36.6 career WAR. Garrett Cole, 40 career WAR. If you get 30 career WAR out of your number 1 overall pick, that's a successful pick pretty much any way you slice it. And honestly, I don't think the Pirates extend either of these guys past.
Probably not. Yeah. I mean, realistically, if these guys are as good as they're supposed to be, well, so so they'll be free agents by the end of 2030, 31. Yeah. So we're going to have revenues keep going. We're probably talking $400 million contracts for these guys. So, probably not under this ownership.
Yeah. But I think there's a good point. You can't really go wrong. I guess when I would follow up with that, should Pirates fans be happy if they decide to go not Skenes or Cruz and they decide to go Clark or Langford? Would we still as a fan base should we still be okay with that? Do you think the talent levels are high enough that those are still good number 1 picks?
Yeah, yes and no. I think yes in terms of they're getting a very good player at number 1. And I like both those guys a lot. Like I said, I think Langford has more power than any of these guys we're talking in the top 5. You know, Jenkins has comparable power, but Langford's done it in the SEC. I mean, we've seen him hit some bombs in the College World Series. Max Clark, like I said, has got the best all-around tools of all these guys. Maybe not, you know, maybe it's more 20 homer power than 30-plus homer power, but, like, he could be a 280. Maybe he's better here than that. And, you know, he's going to run stuff down center field and wreak havoc on the bases. He's got a good arm. So from that standpoint, assuming that, I mean, I don't think we're talking about going outside the top 5. Like, assuming that, yeah, they'd be getting a number 1 caliber player. That would be good. If I were a Pirates fan, I would have a problem with it just from the standpoint of, like I get if, let's say their heart's set on Dylan Cruz. And Dylan Cruz, let's say he wants $10 million. And he's like, I'm not going to sign for less than 10. And the Pirates are like, we think you're going to sign for 9.2. And he's like, okay, but you know what? I'm going to sign with 1 second to go on the clock. And you can't use any of my extra money on anybody else. Because the thing is, too, if he comes out of the pool, his money comes out of the pool. So that's like his 5% of his pick is another $450,000. So it's like he could kind of hold their bonus pool hostage to some extent and fight back. And so, like, you probably don't want to do that if you feel like it's going to come down to that. But then I would be like, okay, fine, we'll take Skenes. We'll give Skenes $9.1 or $9.2 million. I would have a problem as a Pirates fan if you don't take the guy you think is the best player. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I don't think Langford's that far from Cruz. But to me, it's Cruz, Skenes, Cruz, and it's everybody else is just like the next step down. I mean, they may come out and tell you, hey, we want Langford number 1 on our board. I just don't know if I was a Pirates fan, I'd believe it. Like, if the Pirates don't take a guy they thought was as good as any player in the draft, I'd have a problem if I were a Pirates fan. Mm-hmm. Although there's no way they can take a guy who's not worthy of the number 1 pick in a normal year. Okay. So that's my yes and no. It'll be a very good player that they get, but if it's not one of the absolute best, I'd have a problem. Because like I said before, like they can rationalize, hey, we signed this guy for 8.5. Let's say they sign him for $1 million less than Cruz or Skenes or whatever. Are you going to sneak the guy you want down to 42? You better have some options. And there's like 9 teams that can spend big money before you can on your second pick. So you better have a lot of options you're willing to give that extra money to. So I would just take whoever you think is the best guy, and then still be aggressive, and you're still going to be able to get a pretty good player at 42.
Okay.
I was going to say, if there's one thing know about this fan base is they don't trust anything the Pirates say. So you're absolutely correct. They could come out and draft Dylan Cruz and say he was number 1 on the draft board, and the Pirates fans would still not believe it.
Yeah, makes you believe. I will say this. I mean, I do think. I mean, I've known Ben Cherington for a long time, and I respect him a lot, and I think he knows what he's doing. I've lost track. We've been there a couple of years now, 3 years.
2020.
Yeah,
we're on year number 4.
Yep. Yeah, so I would have faith in Ben Cherington. Now, obviously, you could argue Boston's a little different situation, resource-wise, than Pittsburgh.
Sure,
but I do think he's a smart guy, and you know, he knows player development. He was farm director for a long time. And I think he knows talent. I think he knows development.
Okay. One last question about non-Cruz or Skenes, because I am looking at your freshly top 100 right now, and I see a high schooler at the top. I see Jackson Holliday is currently the number 1 prospect in baseball. If the Pirates were to go Max Clark or Walker Jenkins, do you see them on the same level as a Jackson Holliday, who has just been destroying every level he's been at in baseball to skyrocket to the number 1 pick? Or do you think that the risk factor, because they're high school players, just isn't, you can't make that call?
I mean, what you could do is you could compare them at a similar stage of their career when they came out of the draft. Because obviously you're going to take Jackson Holliday every day because he's hit 320 in pro ball and he's already IA at age 19. I think Jackson Holliday a better prospect than say Max Clark was, because he's an infielder, B, he's got more power, C, I think he's a better pure hitter. I mean, and I love Max Clark. Jackson Holliday's ridiculous. He's my dogs second that. They're fighting here on the floor. Guys, chill out. Jackson Holliday's absurd. I mean, I do think I answered this question and like I'm so frazzled I can't remember exactly how I answered. But I had somebody ask me like, what were the top 5 guys in the draft fit on the top 100 compared to other guys? Now, I do think Like Max Clark. Well, here's a good one. I'm not saying we put him ahead of him because our guys played in pro ball already. But if you're comparing Max Clark to Pete Crow Armstrong, who's number 10 on our top 100 prospects list right now, Max Clark's a better prospect than Pete Crow Armstrong coming out of high school. Pete Crow Armstrong was the best defensive center fielder in his draft, and like we're throwing 80s on it now. So he's better defensively than Max was. I think they're similar hitters. There's a lot of question as to how much impact Pete Crow Armstrong was going to have. Like it was kind of like 40 power, 12, 15 homers. And there were some concerns like, is that like, are we even like, is 15 even maybe a little bit much? And Pete Crow has remade his swing, and it's different now. He attacks the ball better, and he's better than he was in high school. But like Max Clark's better than Pete Crow Armstrong was in high school, and we had him at 10. We have James Wood at 6, and James Wood coming out of high school was weird because he's a 6'6", 240, just crazy tools. But people wondered what he could hit coming out of high school. He had a terrible senior year at IMG Academy, and then oddly enough, he's done nothing but hit. Like from day one, he hit like 370 in rookie ball, and he's never stopped hitting. He's in Double A already. So, I think like if they sign Max Clark, my guess is like Max Clark would probably be when we did the new top 100 in midseason. Max Clark would be in the top 20 or 25 prospects in the game. I think all 5 of those guys would be in the top 20 or 25 prospects in the game. Like,
and I'm assuming Cruz and Skenes go immediately into the top 15, if not top 10.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it'd be interesting. Like Dylan Cruz versus like Jackson Chorio's not tearing it up. Like I think certainly Chorio's 19 in Double A, but like Dylan Cruz versus James Wood, like maybe if he doesn't go ahead of him, he probably goes right behind him. I mean, I think Cruz and Skenes go in the top 10, and I do think, especially considering our top 2 pitching prospects right now, Yuri Perez is going to graduate off top 100. Bobby Miller's going to graduate pretty soon. Andrew Painter has yet to throw a pitch this year. To me, Paul Skenes would be the best pitching prospect in baseball when he signs.
Interesting.
All right.
Well, I think it answers too, like just how loaded this top 5 is. I mean, there's real talent there.
Yeah,
so that's interesting to know.
You were saying how the Pirates fans don't trust anything. I will say the one good thing about this is there are 5 really good players in the draft. So even if they do take a discount deal, which would make me grit my teeth, they're still getting a really good player. So it's like you can't really mess this pick. You're getting. I mean, who knows? I'm sure all 5 of them won't turn out to be superstars, but there are 5 guys who are worthy of being the number 1 pick in most years, and they're going to get one of those guys. Yeah, it's better than like Henry Davis looks like he's going to be a pretty good player. Like I still think he's more outfielder than catcher. That doesn't surprise me, but I do think he can hit. But that was a year where it's like, oh man, like there's no like obvious guy here. There's like the year they picked 2nd and the Nationals picked 1st, and Bryce Harper was right there. Like like sometimes you have a good spot or it's a good year. This is a good year to have the number 1 overall pick.
Interesting. And again, that's just the thing. That's with Pirate fans. They always know like it's going to be. You said not all of them will pan out. I think that's part of it too. Cruz is safe. Cruz feels like he's a major leaguer today, where things can happen to Skenes and such. And most Pirates fans feel like if they do take Skenes, well, you're a Pirate fan. Something will happen to him. But I want to ask you one last question here, kind of moving on from the draft in this sense, but the MLB Combine. You were there all last week. That's something kind of newer. I don't think too many fans are familiar with it. We know MLB gets all the exposure, but the Combine is much different. So maybe just asking you, did anyone, I don't know if there's much like changing, but did anyone like show up at the Combine and like wow anyone, anything move up, move down, anything like a stand out at the Combine for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the NFL Combine where like a guy's going to run like a 4.2 and all of a sudden like, oh, he's going first round. Like, and it's funny. Like most of those guys seem like they don't pan out, like John Ross or whatever, running a 4.18 or whatever it was he ran. But it's interesting because I think the most important aspects of the Combine actually happen off the field because so at the Combine, I mean, most of the top players like ranked in the say top 40 or 50 on people's draft prospect list don't participate on the field. They don't really have an like Paul Skenes was at the College World Series, but Paul Skenes went to the Combine. Like he was going to go to the Combine had they not been in the World Series. Paul Skenes wasn't going to go throw a 3-minute bullpen because like what does he have to show you in a 3-minute bullpen? He's like, here's my body work. Teams have video of every pitch he's thrown this year to LSU. The high school guys all get scouted on the showcase circuit with wood bats, everybody's been seeing this spring. So the things they do, like throwing a bullpen for 3 minutes or taking BP or taking infield and outfield, you've seen these guys do. Most of these guys do this a ton. Like maybe if it's a small school guy, like he throws and you get some data on him if you didn't have TrackMan data on him or whatever. But the on-field stuff doesn't matter a ton. Now, there are exceptions for guys who maybe there was an injury question. Like Cameron Johnson, who's a high school pitcher from Florida. He had, I forget what he came down with, minor injury this spring. And missed, I think, like 2-3 months. He came back for Florida High School All-Star game a couple weeks ago, and they pitched the combine. I mean, granted, it was only 3 minutes, but he looked great. And so that helped him. Jacob Mizorowski last year, he's with the Brewers now. That's maybe the best stuff in the minors. He was a JUCO pitcher who had, like, between the pandemic and hamstring injury and a torn meniscus, hadn't been seen a lot before 2022. He looked unbelievable on the mound. But for the most part, the important stuff is, A, the medical testing. Like, MLB's wanted medical testing for a long time. And this is year 3 of the combine. The first year they had the combine, there was no incentive for players to do medical testing. Like, if I do we give you a full medical, and geez, man, your elbow doesn't look good. Tough luck. Sorry, buddy. Like, so nobody's going to take a physical in those circumstances. Last year, the union came to an agreement with MLB. Anybody who takes a physical at the combine is guaranteed 75% of the slot money where they're taking. So you don't have a Kumar Rocker situation where he doesn't do a physical till after the draft. And you're like, oh, man, we don't like the shoulder. We don't like the elbow. We're not going to sign him. You know, if Kumar Rocker had gone to a combine and done a physical, you know, you can make your own determination on his arm. And a lot of times the arm stuff's subjective. So the medical stuff's important. I think there were roughly 300 players at the combine, and I think like 75 or 80%, maybe even more, took physicals. So that's a big part. I think it's all the stuff you don't see on camera. This is the super important stuff. Teams do interviews. Every team had a suite at Chase Field. You know, they'll have 4, 6, 8, 10 executives. And the players will spend like 20, 30 minutes, not necessarily doing all 30 teams, but players could say they want to talk to certain teams. Teams could say they want to talk to certain players. They match them up. And you get to meet a bunch of guys in the front office. And you get a feel like in kind of a casual setting. And teams and players, everybody I've ever talked to in 3 years loves it. In fact, Henry Davis, they didn't take him number 1 because he interviewed well. But Henry Davis really impressed people interview process at the combine. And especially back then, it was coming off the pandemic. You didn't get as much face-to-face time with players. It's gotten better as we've gotten further away from the pandemic. And then they'll do like athletic testing, like strength and conditioning measurements and 30-yard dashes and broad jumps. And, you know, the players consent to that. Like, you know, I'm no expert on that stuff. But that's stuff you don't have on a lot of players. Like, and it's useful to get, you know, if they're willing to provide it. So it's more that type of stuff where it kind of, I think, fills out a picture for a player as opposed to, we had this guy as a 3rd round pick and he had a great BP, so now he's a 1st rounder. Like, it doesn't really work that way, but you just can feel better, or I guess theoretically worse about a player when you see his medicals, when you do the interviews, when you get some of the athletic data. Because, like, I mean, this is no surprise here. Most of the guys who performed in the workout, like, were guys who crushed the ball in BP, and they crushed the ball in BP. And most of the guys who threw the ball in the 3-minute bullpens either throw hard or they can really spin it, and you have the data. Like, you aren't going to participate in those things if you don't think they're going to help you. And like I said, the very best guys, like if I'm Dylan Cruz, like let's say he'd gone to the combine, well, what's he going to show you? Like, you already know the guy's like the number 1 prospect in the draft for most teams. Like, he can take BP and make you think he's even better. Like, you're not going to be like, the Pirates aren't going to go, oh, okay, now we'll give him $10 million. Like, great BP, great interview. Okay, now you blank check. Like, it just doesn't work that way.
Sure. Awesome. Well, no, I appreciate that insight. That's really all I had. I really value your time, Jim. I know we went a little over than I told you.
Funny.
Sorry.
Like I told you, I'm busy and like we go like maybe 20, 30 minutes, but I love talking draft. You guys ask good questions and we went close to an hour. Like, that is funny. Now I'm like this just heightens my anticipation. Now it's like, I want the draft to be tomorrow. I don't want to wait, I guess, 13 days from when we're recording this. I don't want to wait 13 days to know who the Pirates are going to pick. I want to know now. So
neither do we.
I know.
But I think what we're hearing is that Jacob Wilson is number 1 pick. Lock it in.
His dad played for the Pirates, right?
Yeah.
Jack.
He's my favorite player growing up. So,
well, there you go. So you'll be the one guy when they announce Jack Wilson. You'll be like, yes. It's funny. I like Jack Wilson. He's a little tough to figure. Like, he's easily the best contact hitter in this draft. I think struck out 5 times this year after striking out 7 times last year for Grand
It's
Canyon.
crazy.
Yeah.
And I think he's got a good chance to stay at shortstop, more so than some of these other college shortstops are going to go pretty good. It's like I think some teams are digging him a little bit for exit velocities and how much impact he's ultimately going to have. Like, he might only be a 10, 12, 15 home run guy, but he also might play a decent shortstop and hit 300. So, but yeah, he's going to go pretty good. He just shouldn't go number 1. If he goes number 1, people
Right.
should.
Yeah.
Well, no, for real though, Jim, really great. Appreciate you coming on. Good stuff. And we'll be adding you when Pirates fans are pissed off. That is not Cruz or Skenes.
We'll see. We'll see. Like I said, they'll get a good. If that's the case, they're still getting a very good player. You should never compromise talent with the number 1 overall pick. You got to take or any first round pick. I'm not saying you should take all ceiling with a bunch of risk, but whoever you think the best player is, that's who you should take, as long as he's signable within your bonus. And everybody's signable within the Pirates bonus.
For sure. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again. Maybe we'll talk to you some other time soon, but you enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Hey, you all, thank you for watching. I know we try to provide the most entertaining content that we can, and we'd love to spread it to as many people as possible. So I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but if you could take the 5 seconds to like this video and subscribe to the page, it helps out so much more than you know. Thank you, and let's go Bucks.